Greetings and salutations. I'm here with my review of Ash. This is a new horror/sci-fi film starring Eiza González. She plays Rhea, an astronaut. It's the future, and she is on a ship that has traveled to another planet for potential colonization, but she wakes up and everyone's dead. The entire crew except her has been killed in some terrible way. And she has amnesia. So she doesn't remember what happened exactly and how she ended up in this situation. And then another astronaut shows up in the form of Aaron Paul as Brian. He was basically support crew for her mission. He was up in a satellite above. He comes down to check on the situation. And now the two of them have to figure out what exactly happened, what happened to the crew, is the danger to the crew still present? This is the feature directorial debut of Flying Lotus, the rapper/DJ who previously directed one of the short segments in VHS 99. And I'd say as a feature debut, it's a pretty solid one. Now, this is a low-budget movie, which is pretty clear watching it. You know, it's very contained. It's mostly inside this ship. On the surface, they go outside here and there. I think that he definitely shows that he's got a knack for visual styles. I really like how this movie looks. It's kind of bathed in a lot of blue and a lot of red, very graphic. There's a very sort of comic book feel to it. And I also think it's a clever way to kind of work around the fact that the budget is low. For instance, the visual effects. Now, look, they clearly didn't have, an ILM Star Wars budget here for their space effects. But it goes for kind of a trippy, surreal style when Rhea is looking up at the sky and it's almost this kaleidoscope of color. It doesn't look 100% real, but it almost doesn't need to because there's something a little trippy, a little off about it that I think really helps. And I think I really like the vibe, the feel of this movie, the color palette of this movie. There's some cool production design choices. I really like their spacesuits and how it has this kind of literal exoskeleton spinal look to it, and then the glowing light from within. Now on the plot side, there's a lot of things here that are familiar for sure. It's funny, this is literally the second movie in 2 weeks to have the setup be astronauts going out into space because they're one of many ships that are trying to find a place to colonize because the Earth is dying. I understand many stories have begun with this setup, but Mickey 17 being out in theaters right now makes this kind of feel extra familiar, but great example of how you can go completely different directions with your story because, man, those two movies could not be more different, Ash and Mickey 17. I will say here, I'm not going to go into spoilers, promise. But if you have any modicum of history of watching fiction, you're going to think as an audience member, as I did very quickly, oh, did she kill everyone on this ship? I'm not going to tell you the answer to that. I'm just going to say that it was so on my mind right away. Because, she wakes up, she has amnesia, everyone's dead. I was a little nervous that they weren't going to talk about this for a while. They do early enough. They bring up the possibility early enough that I was relieved. Not to say where it goes eventually, but just to say that they don't forget to not make the characters look like idiots for not even talking about that as one way it would go. Even though I think it should almost have been in the first 5 minutes. Hey, are we sure you didn't do this? But that's not how the story goes. But it works well enough the way it goes. I really like the interplay between González and Aaron Paul here. Has these two characters. I mean, it's really just the two of them for so much of the movie. So it really rests on their shoulders, and that's it's a good thing that they're very talented actors doing this. Eiza González, I really liked her in Ambulance a few years ago, the Michael Bay movie. Wasn't a big fan of that movie, like some of my friends were, but I thought that she was really strong as the lead. And, the first time I'd seen her in really the main lead role in a film. And I think that she shows that same, natural charisma here. She really holds the screen. She has a great intensity. It is kind of funny that the movie puts her, look, she's a very attractive woman, but the movie puts her in one very form-fitting space outfit after another, but it kind of lends itself to sort of the B-movie feel of it. But yeah, I really liked her. I really liked Aaron Paul, even though he has to have kind of a very interior closed-off role because he is this unknown presence to her, and there's going to be this big question mark. How can we trust him or not? I know in real life the two of them are friends, though. I think that they had good chemistry here on screen. And then the movie kind of, as it builds out, it gets a little bogged down in the middle. It's a short film. It's only about 95 minutes. I felt it got a little sloggy. Is that a word? Well, it is now. In the center, but then I thought it built pretty well towards a conclusion that is kind of funny in that it is very reminiscent of multiple beloved films. There's a bunch of different plot elements that kind of weave together that will remind you of major things from other movies in a way that I did think was fun. In a sort of B movie like this, it almost feels like, yes, that's appropriate. That let's do this sort of big mixture of things you've liked in other movies and do our little, our low budget spin on it. I think that there's a lot of it's done with sort of affection and clear love for the genre in a way that made me appreciative of it. It is where some of the seams start to show more on the special effects, though, I think, because, like I said, they kind of get away with it being more low budget with the creative, trippy ways they do things earlier. There are some creature effects, though, that just look like the low budget CGI they are. I'm not one of those people saying always practical over digital, because digital can be amazing. There are times though when it's this low budget where you're like, maybe they should have just had a little puppet. Maybe that would have been better, because some of the things do take you out for a moment when you're watching some of these things happen, and it's like, oh, that's a little cartoon they're dealing with there, because they just clearly simply didn't have the money to make it look 100% realistic. I think there are nice touches throughout the movie. We don't go into a lot of detail about what life is like back on Earth, except it's bleak. But I do like these little nods we get, and the idea that it's clearly become a Japanese-dominated culture. They have a medical device on board that speaks Japanese, but there's also some, nice little dark subversive touches. Like it's very cheerful when delivering terrible news, this device. There's a fun little beat where a med kit, kind of a first aid kit, has manga style instructions, which are helpful for anyone, whatever language you read, on what to do with the things inside. So there are these nice little, beats throughout. And like I said, the visuals I really liked. The moments where you just sort of see these characters in this blue, in this red. You do feel like Flying Lotus has a good, distinct eye, has a first-time feature filmmaker, and it did make me feel like, oh, there's definitely some promise here. I want to see what he does with a bigger budget and, maybe scaling up going forward. I think the movie, the very end, is kind of pretty flat. And I think that the problem is that there's not a lot of emotional depth here. They do some flashbacks. We see the crew, including Flying Lotus playing one of the crew. And we get a couple glimpses of this relationship that Rhea had with one of her crewmates before everyone died. But it's not enough. And the movie ends on a beat that's supposed to kind of leave us feeling emotion and kind of feeling like, what she went through in a way that I don't think it's earned. And it wasn't the right or appropriate beat to end this movie on. I wish that they'd kind of leaned more into the pulpy side of things at the very, very end. I'm saying the go to credits moment almost, instead of trying to kind of be like, didn't we go on an emotional journey with her? Because I didn't feel the emotional side, but I thought has a, cool, low budget sci-fi horror blend. It works, it works. I like these actors. It's a fun, I think, a fun watch for people who like genre movies of this sort. So those are my thoughts on Ash, which is in theaters now. If you can if you can subscribe, I'd appreciate it. Everyone would appreciate it. Well, not everyone, but I would. Okay. All right, guys. Thanks a lot. Take care.